But you're going to Europe this summer on PanAm.
Because you can't beat the experience or the price.
America? I guess we're going.
You can't beat the experience.
Almost 3 decades ago, the aviation world witnessed one of the most unforgettable airline collapses, the Pan American Airways. Nobody expected such a drastic fall for PanAm. For being a pioneer in the air travel agency in the world, they failed and went bankrupt. With their widespread impact in the aviation industry, their recovery and rise back to fame were anticipated. But it didn't happen. PanAm's effect on the aviation industry was profound. The airline had successfully expanded its routes across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, establishing a global network that set new standards for long-distance travel. With its iconic Clipper aircraft, PanAm made international travel more accessible and comfortable for passengers, effectively shaping the modern concept of air travel. When discussing an airline that has recorded massive global success, PanAm comes first. However, despite its early successes and innovations, PanAm faced so many challenges in the later decade of the 20th century. Some of these were financial and operational difficulties, rising competition, geopolitical changes, and economic pressures, which ultimately led to the airline's decline. They finally ceased operation and went bankrupt. To understand why PanAm failed, let's delve deeper into where their problems started until they hit rock bottom and went bankrupt. We at Business Chronicles tell extraordinary business stories. Please subscribe to our channel and help us make more videos. Pan American World Airways, popularly known by many as PanAm, was a pioneering airline with major successes. It was the first airline to fly around the world and pioneered numerous innovations in the modern airline industry, like computerized reservation system and jumbo jets. They played a significant role in the history of aviation for the period they were in operation. Founded in 1927, PanAm was a trailblazer in establishing international air travel, connecting the United States with various destinations around the globe. PanAm was founded by a group of investors led by Juan Trippi, who was a former World War I naval aviator. He began by securing a contract to fly between Key East, Florida, United States, and Havana, Cuba. After securing the contract, on June 2, 1927, and with a sum of $250,000, Juan Trippi formed the Aviation Corporation of the Americas, known as ACA. At the time, he got backing from several politically connected and powerful people like W. Averell Harriman and Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney. As part of their operation, they had exclusive landing rights for Havana after buying American International Airways, a small airline formed in 1926 by John Montgomery and Richard B. Bavier as a seaplane service. Now, in order to bid for the contract, they formed a third company on October 11, 1927, called October Atlantic Gulf and Caribbean Airways. Once the contract was secured and the airline agency was in operation, Trippi and his associates made arrangements to expand PanAm's network around Central and South America, which they eventually did, to an extent, by acquiring several ailing and defunct airlines in Central and South America in the late 1920s and early 1930s. They reached an agreement with several postal offices to win the rights to the government's airmail contacts in those regions. By September 1929, Trippi, in the company of Charles Lindbergh, toured around Latin America, negotiating landing rights with the governments of several countries, including Caracas in Venezuela and Barranquilla on SCADA's home ground. By the end of the year, PanAm began offering its customers flight from the west coast of Southern America to Peru. After getting favored to deny mail contracts to their competitors, a forced merger happened between the New York, Buenos Aires, and Rio line, providing a direct seaplane route along the eastern coast of Southern America, all through Argentina, Buenos Aires, and westbound to Chile. PanAm's Brazilian subsidiary called Nerba do Brasil was later renamed to Panair do Brasil to gain a foothold in other destinations in South America further. PanAm formed a partnership with Grace Shipping Company in 1929. The result of the formation was called Pan American Grace Airways, also known as Panagra. The same year, PanAm bought a controlling stake in Mexicana de Aviación, taking control over the route of Mexico's Ford Trimotor, spanning from Brownsville, Texas to Mexico City. The airline's first passenger services between those cities began the next year. By the end of 1929, Pan America had a 12,000-mile or 19,000-kilometer route that linked the United States to top places like Cuba, Haiti, Puerto, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Belize, Panama, and Colombia. In 1936, Pan America went on to inaugurate the famous China Clipper's first trans-Pacific flight from San Francisco to Manila. It did the same for the first transatlantic flight from New York City to Lisbon 3 years later. At the end of the Second World War, Pan America was arguably the leading international air carrier, and this was largely due to its acquisition in the mid-1950s when it bought the Boeing company's first ever jetliner, B-707, thus leading the way in jet travel. During World War II, PanAm played a pivotal role in supporting the war effort by operating military transport services and contributing to the development of long-range aircraft. After the war, the airline experienced a period of rapid expansion, establishing itself as a global leader in commercial aviation and aviation in general. During the period of its inception, the airline operated major airmail services in Latin America. However, it soon increased its operation to include passenger flights. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, PanAm continued to grow its international routes, connecting the United States with destinations across Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. Financially, the airline also contributed largely to the economy. Its holding company, the Aviation Corporation of the Americas, was one of the most sought-after stock listed in the New York Curb Exchange in 1929. However, speculation circulated surrounding all new routes awarded. But Trippi was determined to do more, and by April 29, he and his associates entered an agreement with the UTEC, United Aircraft and Transport Corporation, to set apart PanAm operations to the southern Mexico, United States border in exchange for the UTEC, taking a large stakeholder stake in UATC being a parent company of what are now Boeing, Pratt & Whitney, and United Airlines. In 1931, the Aviation Corporation of the Americas finally changed its name to Pan American Airways Corporation. Pan American World Airways grew till it became the largest international airline in the United States for much of the 20th century. Their growth over the years they were in operation can be described as swift and rapid. As part of the changes in the company, in January 1950, Pan American Airways Corporation became Pan American World Airways Incorporation. While it became official that year, the airline adopted the Pan American World Airways name earlier in 1943. After officially taking the name, PanAm completed a whopping $17.45 million acquisition of American Overseas Airlines from American Airlines in September of that year. That same month, PanAm ordered 45 Douglas DC-6Bs, the first Clipper Liberty Bell, and set up PanAm's all-tourist class Rainbow service between London and New York on May 1, 1952. It was done to act as a complimentary service to the President's Stratocruiser service. Starting in June 1954, DC-6Bs began replacing DC-4S on PanAm's international German routes. If there was one thing we could notice from PanAm's over the years, it was the rapid growth and accumulation of what seemed to be the liabilities during their operation. All of these were pointers towards failures and bankruptcy, but a deaf ear was turned towards the pointers. Regardless of all of these, the airline played a significant role in shaping the modern aviation industry and was a pioneer in many areas of commercial aviation. PanAm's fleet included iconic aircraft such as the Boeing 314 Clipper and the Boeing 747 Jumbo Jet, and it was renowned for its luxurious passenger service and innovative in-flight amenities. The airline was also a trailblazer in the development of aviation technology, including the use of radio navigation aids and the implementation of global air traffic control systems, which was not common at that time. They were praised for constantly improving the aviation sector with rare innovations. PanAm has made significant contributions to the airline industry through the collaborative effort of both men and women to improve safety, efficiency, and passenger experience while flying. PanAm played a significant role in revolutionizing the aircraft manufacturing industry. They were the airline responsible for the numerous changes and advancements in the aircraft industry, particularly in the advancement of seaplane design and the development of long-range ocean aircraft such as the Martin M130 and Boeing 314C planes. The company also collaborated with Boeing, notably in developing and operating the 6707 and 67475 and 6747 SP aircraft, becoming the first US carrier to operate them in passenger services. Pan Am's modern fleet made it possible to fly more passengers at a longer range and with much fewer stops than its rivals. The primary hub and flagship terminal was stationed in New York at the famous John F. Kennedy International Airport. During its peak years that lasted through the late 1950s and early 1970s, Pan Am was known for possessing an advanced fleet, highly trained staff, and superb social amenities, which made it different from other airlines. Some of its notable track records date back to the early 90s. For instance, in the 1970s, the airline successfully flew a total of 11 million passengers to 86 countries, with destinations in all continents except Antarctica. And by doing so, they became the unofficial national carrier of the United States in an era was largely dominated by flag carriers wholly or majorly owned by governments. Pan Am was among the founding members of the International Air Transport Association, which was the global airline industry association. All of these and more were some of the notable achievements of the Pan Am. As regards the net worth of the world's largest airplane, it increased as it acquired more experience and equipment assets. So it didn't come as a surprise when Pan Am used the world's most experienced airline slogan for its adverts during its peak. During that time, the airline was transporting around 6.7 million passengers in a year, while over 150 of its jets flew to 86 countries on each continent except Antarctica, using a scheduled route network of almost 82,000 unduplicated miles, aka 131,000 kilometers. The airline was profitable during that period, and its cash reserves totaled $1 billion. What happened to all of that revenue they were able to generate? Not forgetting the airline's positive impact on global tourism and trade. From all indications, they had all the resources, and it didn't seem right that they were going to fail or go bankrupt. Pan Am started facing several financial difficulties in the 1980s due to increased competition, rising operating costs, and geopolitical challenges. These pressures, combined with the effect of the 1988 Lockerbie bombing and subsequent Gulf War, led to the airline's decline. The issue that caused the decline of Pan Am started with so many wrong investments, a lack of proper management, and several terrorist attacks. Pan Am had made significant investments in a large fleet of Boeing 747s, anticipating a continued rise in air travel. However, this expectation was not met, as the increase coincided with a period of economic downturn, during which Pan Am and its competitors introduced many wide-body aircraft. The overcapacity issue was exacerbated by reduced air travel following the 1973 oil crisis. Pan Am, with its substantial decentralized infrastructure and high overheads, became increasingly vulnerable as a result of all of these. The purchase of National Airlines for $437 million added additional pressure to Pan Am's financial situation, which was already in a crestfallen state. The world's largest airway was already strained from funding the Boeing 747 orders in the mid-1960s, and as a result, the acquisition failed to enhance Pan Am's competitive standing in an already deregulated industry. Probing further as what caused the decline and bankruptcy, the Pan Am had also suffered from a lot of terrorist attacks. The Pan Am Flight 103 bombing above Lockerbie, Scotland, resulted in 270 fatalities, which the airline had to pay for heavily. Over 100 families of the victims collectively sued Pan Am for $300 million. However, the airline subpoenaed records of 6 United States government agencies, including the Drug Enforcement Administration, the State Department, and the CIA. However, records suggested that the United States government had prior knowledge of an intended bombing and failed to communicate it to Pan Am. While the victim families claimed Pan Am was attempting to shift the blame, but all these contributed to their decline. Constant international terrorist attacks towards the United States policy abroad that directly targeted Pan Am and climaxed in the 1988 infamous Clipper 103 disaster. Flight 103 from Pan Am became the target of a terrorist attack. According to reports, a bomb detonated on the flight over Lockerbie, Scotland. All 259 passengers on board were killed, and 11 individuals on the ground also died that day. This tragedy caused a major setback for Pan Am and became one of the major reasons behind the airline's collapse. Another major contribution to their quit was the Gulf War, triggered by the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait on August 2, 1990. The war caused fuel prices to rise, which severely depressed global economic activity. This in turn adversely caused a sharp contraction of the worldwide air travel demand, plunging once profitable operations, including Pan Am's prime transatlantic routes, into steep losses. Despite battling all the major issues they had before, and trying to come up with solutions. These unforeseen events constituted a further major blow to PanAm, which was still reeling from the 1988 Lockerbie disaster. To shore up its finances, PanAm sold most of its routes serving London Heathrow, arguably PanAm's most important international destination, to United Airlines. The economic recession had hit it so hard, and PanAm's financial troubles were exacerbated by economic recessions and fluctuations in fuel prices, impacting the airline profitability and operational cost. As time went by, the demand for aircraft resulted in an increased competition between other airlines and PanAm. The airline industry deregulation in the United States led to intensified competition as numerous new air carriers entered the market, eroding PanAm's market share and revenue. The Airline Deregulation Act was proposed in 1978 by President Jimmy Carter. The legislation reduced the government control over several significant aspects of the aviation sector. While changing circumstances made it easier for startups to achieve success, it greatly impacted Pan and caused financial restraint. With all of these, PanAm started to experience trouble keeping up with the market entrants. All of these resulted in a huge influx of debt. PanAm accumulated so much debt to the expansion efforts, acquiring new aircrafts and developing its route network, which strained the company's financial resources. The airline was also adversely affected by geopolitical events, including political instability in some of its key international markets, and the impacts of global conflicts on international travel patterns. All of these could have been managed properly if PanAm had initially learned the simple trick of cutting your coat according to your size. The airline had faced operational difficulties, including high operational cost, labor disputes, and constraints posed by aging fleet, which affected its ability to compete effectively in its counterparts in the field. They eventually got worse as the days went by, and poor management choices worsened the situation. These multifaceted challenges collectively contributed to PanAm's inability to sustain its operations, leading to its eventual failure and bankruptcy. They tried their best to manage the entire thing, but it did not work out. For example, during the 1980s, PanAm sold several valuable properties to reduce its losses. For example, in 1986, the airline sold its Pacific division to the United States Airlines, handing over valuable assets such as planes, gates, landing rights, and contracts to a crucial competitor, which just doesn't make any sense. Delta Airlines had purchased the majority of PanAm for $1.4 billion, acquiring its European routes, Northeastern shuttle routes, 45 jets, Frankfurt Mini Hub, and flagship PanAm Worldport Terminal at JFK International Airport. Delta asserted that PanAm was experiencing daily losses of approximately $3 million in later months of 1991. Needing $25 million to sustain operation for just one more week, PanAm managed to persuade bankruptcy judge that they were nearing an agreement with TWA for continued operation on December the 3rd. Consequently, the airline resumed regular business on December the 4th, only to be abruptly terminated within an hour, resulting in the immediate loss of jobs for about 7,500 employees. After much hustle and tussle, PanAm finally ceased operation on December 4, 1991. PanAm Flight 436 was the last to carry the airline's flag, heading from Bridgetown, Barbados to Miami, Florida on a Boeing 727. All this was done after enduring so much financial distress. They finally filed for bankruptcy, making the end of an era in commercial aviation. Thomas Plaskett, the chairman of PanAm, stated that the company filing for bankruptcy was the beginning of a new era and a chance to move past its troubled history. According to the Washington Post in 1991, the 63-year-old carrier has spent much of the last decade on the verge of financial catastrophe, difficulties that forced to sell some of its most valuable assets, including the Intercontinental Hotel in New York, where today's press conference was held, the airline's Pacific division, its landmark Manhattan office building, and its London routes. If this is any conclusion to fans of PanAm, they were not the only airline that had to shut down. PanAm was the third major American airline to shut down in 1991, after Eastern Airlines and Midway Airlines. Although several airlines have tried reviving the PanAm brand over the years, none have succeeded. Founded in 1972, the airline would have been 91 had it survived to the present day. Instead, it ceased operation in 1991 at 64 years old due to bankruptcy and many other issues and controversies. However, the PanAm name lives on and has now been adopted by a private rail transport company. The world's biggest airline may have ceased operation in 1991, but its legacy profoundly shaped modern aviation service. One of the most significant contributions is PanAm's unwavering commitment to passenger experience. The airline set an unprecedented standard for in-flight services, emphasizing efficiency, luxury, and hospitality. Today, airlines worldwide draw inspiration from PanAm's meticulous attention to detail and the provision of amenities that go beyond the necessities. Despite its ultimate demise, PanAm's legacy continues to influence the aviation industry, and the airline remains an enduring symbol of the golden age of air travel. The brand logo also speaks volumes. PanAm took flying to a stylish level, most associated with the golden age of travel. The airline's legacy still lives on. PanAm's influence on global route networks has another lasting impact on modern air travel. The airline's pioneering spirit in establishing intercontinental routes and connecting major cities laid the groundwork for the expansive network of today's international carriers. PanAm's vision of making the world more accessible by air has become a cornerstone of the modern airline industry, with carriers striving to replicate the global connectivity and cosmopolitan flair that PanAm once embodied and acted out. The legacy of PanAm also extends to its iconic brand image and marketing strategies. The blue globe logo and the airline's distinctive livery became symbols of reliability and excellence. In the modern era, airlines recognize the power of a strong brand identity and its impact on passenger loyalty and perceptions. PanAm's legacy serves as a reminder that an airline is not merely a mode of transportation, but a brand that represents a lifestyle and a promise of quality service, which so many airlines have imbibed currently. The echoes of PanAm Golden Age still resonates in the expectations and experiences of today's air travelers, ensuring that airlines' culture imprints remains embedded in every fabric of modern aviation services. We don't have the PanAm with us anymore, but its legacy gives us all the consolation we need, knowing that they have failed and gone bankrupt. If you enjoyed watching this video, do leave a like and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories and hidden secrets.